Welcome to the sleep route. If you are ready to fall asleep, please fasten your seat belts and let's start our story. Imagine yourself, if you will, gently stirring as the first tendrils of dawn, perhaps a pale gray, begin to filter through the heavy velvet or lace curtains of a Victorian bedroom. The air, though morning fresh, might carry the lingering scent of coal smoke from the previous night's fires, now dampened to a gentle ember. The sounds are subtle. The distant clip-clop of a solitary horse-drawn cart on the cobbled street, perhaps the soft chirping of sparrows in the eaves, or the quiet rustle of a servant already beginning their day downstairs. There is no urgency in these sounds, no jarring modernity. The world outside is awakening slowly, deliberately, much like the process of a long, deep breath, inviting you to simply be present in this quiet unfolding. Your bed likely a grand affair of dark, polished mahogany or walnut, with its plush hangings and perhaps a carved headboard, feels cocoon-like. A haven against the persistent chill of the morning air that often crept even into well-appointed homes. The linens, perhaps crisp white cotton or softer, warmer flannel, would have been laundered with meticulous care, pressed smooth and folded with precise attention to detail. The early morning light, still muted by the heavy curtains, catches the dust motes dancing in the air, revealing the quiet, undisturbed nature of the room. A large ornate washstand in the corner holds a porcelain basin and ewer, their smooth, cool surfaces awaiting the arrival of warm water for your morning ablutions. The patterns on the wallpaper, perhaps a delicate floral sprig, a subtle stripe, or a more ornate damask in shades of olive green or deep crimson, seem to emerge from the shadows as the light strengthens, revealing their intricate details and adding a layer of visual texture to the quiet space. The heavy wardrobe, perhaps with mirrored doors, stands silent sentinel, holding the many layers of clothing that will soon become part of your daily ritual. The rhythm of a Victorian woman's morning was often one of quiet preparation, a deliberate and unhurried sequence of actions, especially for those of the middle and upper classes. Unlike today's hurried starts, there was a sense of unfolding, of a carefully choreographed routine. For a woman of means, the first interaction of the day might be with her personal maid, who would assist with the intricate process of dressing. This was not a quick affair. Indeed, it was a ritual that could consume a significant portion of the morning. The layers of clothing were numerous, each serving a specific purpose, each requiring careful fastening, hooks, buttons, and ribbons. The initial layer, often a simple chemise or shift of fine cotton or linen, offered a soft barrier against the skin, protecting the more expensive outer garments from perspiration and acting as a foundational layer for modesty. Over this would come the drawers, often knee-length or reaching to the ankles, providing additional warmth and ensuring complete modesty. Then the corset. The corset. This garment, so central to the Victorian silhouette, was not merely a fleeting fashion accessory. It was a structural foundation, a constant firm embrace that shaped the body into the desired hourglass figure, pulling in the waist, lifting the bust, and flattening the stomach. Its lacing, often a lengthy process that required the assistance of a maid, would be tightened gradually, cinching the waist with a firm, yet usually tolerable pressure. While popular myths often exaggerate the discomfort and pain associated with corsets, portraying them as instruments of torture for many women, especially those accustomed to them from a young age, they were simply part of daily wear, becoming a familiar, if restrictive, embrace. The sensation would be one of firm support, a constant reminder of one's posture and form, encouraging a regal uprightness. Breathing might feel shallower, more concentrated in the upper chest, but it was a familiar sensation, not necessarily one of acute pain or gasping for air, but a new way of inhabiting one's body. The gentle creak of the stays as one moved, the subtle pressure against the ribs, became a constant, almost comforting, background sensation. Over the corset would go the various understructures, depending on the decade. In earlier periods, this might be the crinoline, a vast caged petticoat that provided the expansive shape to the skirts, swaying gently with each step. In later decades, it might be the bustle, which emphasized the rear silhouette. Then, the petticoats, often several layers of starched cotton or flannel, adding to the volume and smoothing the line of the dress, creating a graceful drape. Finally, the gown itself, with its fitted bodice, often buttoned or hooked up the front or back, and its voluminous skirt. The fabrics would vary with the season and the woman's social standing. Perhaps heavy wools or rich velvets for winter, designed for warmth and opulence, or lighter silks, crisp cottons, or delicate muslins for summer, allowing for some airflow in the warmer months. The rustle of these numerous layers of fabrics, as one moved, would be a constant, gentle accompaniment to the day, a soft symphony of movement, a quiet declaration of presence. Breakfast for many was a quiet, domestic affair, imbued with a sense of order and tradition. Served in the formal dining room, the table would be set with gleaming silverware, delicate porcelain, and perhaps a linen tablecloth. The fare might consist of simple, nourishing staples. Thick slices of toast, fresh butter, homemade preserves, perhaps soft-boiled eggs, cold meats, or a hearty bowl of porridge, all accompanied by strong, steaming tea or freshly brewed coffee poured from silver pots. The conversation, if any, would be subdued, reflecting the still early hour and the conventions of the time. This was not a space for boisterous discussion or hurried departures, but rather for a gentle beginning to the day, a moment of calm before the various duties and routines commenced. For the lady of the house, this might involve a quiet review of the day's plans, supervising servants in hushed tones, planning meals with the cook, or attending to household accounts in her personal ledger. For unmarried daughters, it might involve quiet needlework, reading, improving literature, or preparing for social calls and visits later in the day. The quiet hum of domesticity would permeate the air, a sense of order and routine of each person fulfilling their expected role within the confines of the home. Even the light, now a little brighter, still felt soft, diffused by the lace curtains, lending an almost painterly quality to the scene. The world was not yet fully awake, and neither, in a sense, were its inhabitants, moving through their morning rituals with a gentle, unhurried grace. This slow unfolding of the day was a characteristic of the era, a stark contrast to the rapid pace of modern life, inviting us to linger in the quiet moments, observing the intricate dance of routine and expectation. It was a world where time itself seemed to stretch, allowing for a deeper immersion into the rhythms of everyday life. Let us now turn our gaze, gently, toward a life that, while rooted in the same Victorian era, began to diverge from the expected path, illustrating a quiet determination that would eventually ripple through society. Imagine a young woman, perhaps not unlike others in her social standing, but with a quiet intensity a burgeoning sense of purpose that simmered. Beneath the surface of polite accomplishments and drawing-room conversations, this was Florence Nightingale, a name that now resonates with deep significance, synonymous with modern nursing, but whose early years were steeped in the very domestic expectations and societal confines that governed so many women of her time. Born in 1820 into a wealthy, well-connected family, her initial environment was one of considerable comfort and intellectual stimulation. Her parents, particularly her intellectually inclined father, provided an education far more comprehensive than was typical for girls of her era, encompassing classical literature, philosophy, history, mathematics, and a broad range of scientific subjects. This intellectual nourishment, however, was in stark contrast to the prevailing societal expectations for women of her class. To make an advantageous marriage, efficiently manage a large household, raise children, and engage in charitable works as a pleasant, if peripheral, pastime, a gentle expression of social responsibility. Florence, however, felt a persistent internal pull towards something more. Something beyond the elegant confines of the drawing room and the predictable rhythms of social obligations. This quiet longing was not a loud, dramatic rebellion in the conventional sense, but rather a profound, almost spiritual conviction that she was meant for a life of active service, a life dedicated to alleviating human suffering. As she entered her 20s, a period when many of her peers were contemplating or entering into advantageous marriages and establishing their own households, Florence found herself increasingly drawn to the suffering she observed around her, particularly among the impoverished and the unwell in the burgeoning urban centers. She visited hospitals, not as a casual visitor or a lady distributing tracts, but with a keen, observant eye, noting the squalid conditions, the pervasive lack of hygiene, the disorganization, and the often rudimentary and ineffective care that frequently led to more suffering rather than less. Her detailed observations filled notebooks, a quiet accumulation of knowledge that would later become invaluable. The quiet suffering of Florence's early life was not one of material deprivation. Indeed, she lacked for nothing in that regard. Rather, it was an internal conflict, a struggle against deeply ingrained societal expectations, and the gentle yet firm disapprobation of those she loved most. Imagine the quiet conversations in elegant sitting rooms, the unspoken tensions at the family dinner table, the gentle urgings from her mother and sister to consider more suitable matches, to embrace a life of domestic tranquility and social engagement, which they believed was her rightful sphere. Florence, however, remained quietly resolute, her conviction a steady, unwavering flame within her. She embarked on a path of rigorous self-education in nursing, reading extensively on hospital administration and public health, visiting institutions both at home and abroad, quietly absorbing knowledge and understanding the practicalities of patient care, hygiene, and hospital management. Her preparations were meticulous, almost obsessive, a reflection of her deep-seated belief in the importance of systematic observation, statistical analysis, and scientific principles, even in an area as seemingly rudimentary as bedside nursing. She meticulously collected data, analyzed trends, and formulated theories long before she had a formal platform. The opportunity that finally allowed her to break free from these societal confines, to apply her quiet, painstaking preparations on a much larger and more public stage, arrived with the outbreak of the Crimean War in 1854, reports of the horrific conditions in military hospitals, reaching England, stirred public outrage and concern. Sidney Herbert, the Secretary of State at War, a family friend who knew of Florence's capabilities and quiet determination, invited her to oversee the nursing operations in the Crimea. This was a monumental moment, a quiet turning point, not only for Florence's personal trajectory, but for the very perception and future professionalization of nursing itself. She departed for Scutari with a small team of carefully selected nurses, not with fanfare and dramatic pronouncements, but with a quiet determination, a profound sense of grave purpose, and an almost stoic readiness for the immense challenge ahead. The journey itself would have been arduous, long, and uncomfortable, and their arrival in Scutari was undoubtedly a profound shock. The hospital there was a chaotic scene of disease, overcrowding, inadequate supplies, and endemic filth. The air would have been thick with the smell of unwashed bodies, gangrenous wounds, stagnant water, and the pervasive scent of despair. Yet Florence approached this overwhelming challenge with her characteristic calm and methodical approach. She did not engage in dramatic heroics or emotional outbursts, but rather in the quiet, painstaking work of sanitation, organization, and efficient resource management. She insisted on fundamental principles: clean linens, proper ventilation, nutritious food prepared hygienically, and meticulous record-keeping to track patient outcomes and identify sources of infection. Her presence was not loud or demanding in the conventional sense, but a steady, reassuring force, a quiet embodiment of order amidst chaos. She moved through the wards, often at night, a lamp in her hand, offering comfort, practical care, and quiet words of encouragement to the wounded soldiers, earning her the enduring epithet, the Lady with the Lamp. Her contributions were not merely about personal compassion, though that was undeniably present in abundance. They were about transforming a chaotic, ineffective system into one that prioritized patient well-being through meticulous attention to detail, the application of scientific principles to hygiene and public health, and a rigorous, data-driven approach to hospital administration. Her work in Crimea, a quiet revolution in healthcare administration and nursing practice, ultimately paved the way for the professionalization of nursing across the world, a legacy that continues to resonate today. A testament to the profound and far-reaching impact of quiet resolve and an unwavering commitment to a cause greater than oneself. Her life stands as a quiet, powerful echo of what can be achieved through persistent, understated dedication. As we drift onward, let us explore a fascinating, if somber, aspect of Victorian life: the elaborate and deeply ingrained rituals surrounding death and mourning. In an era marked by higher mortality rates, especially among children and young adults, due to prevalent diseases, and a strong emphasis on sentiment, domesticity, and the sanctity of the family unit. Death was not a hidden event to be swept under the rug, but a profound public and often prolonged process. The quiet suffering associated with loss was not merely an internal grief of the heart, but was outwardly expressed and structured through a complex, silent language of dress, custom, and a rich material culture, allowing society to collectively navigate sorrow. Imagine a household suddenly enveloped in the hushed solemnity of black. Following a death, every object that could be covered or removed often was. Mirrors were draped with black crepe or cloth, not just as a sign of mourning, but from a superstition that the deceased spirit might become trapped within the reflective surface. Clocks in the house were often stopped at the precise moment of death, symbolizing time ceasing for the departed loved one and marking the precise point of transition. Windows might be opened, even on a chilly day, to allow the soul to depart freely into the ether, a quiet act of release. The initial period, particularly for widows, was one of intense, rigidly prescribed mourning, often lasting a year and a day, or even longer, depending on social status and the depth of the relationship. During this time, the widow would wear full mourning attire, dull matte black fabrics like crepe, often without any sheen or ornamentation, along with a thick veil that completely obscured her face when she ventured outside the home. This was not merely a fashion choice. It was a powerful societal expectation, a visible declaration of her profound sorrow and her temporary separation from the vivacity and social gaiety of the living world. The weight of the heavy fabric, the somberness of the unadorned color, the restrictive nature of the attire, all subtly contributed to the quiet, internal experience of grief, mirroring the perceived heaviness of the heart. The evolution of mourning attire was precise and ritualistic, a carefully observed progression. After the initial period of deep mourning, a widow would gradually transition to second mourning, where some relief in fabric and adornment was permitted. Perhaps a piece of jet jewelry or a different texture of black fabric, like silk or cashmere, which might catch the light. Then came half mourning, a phase where softer colors like gray, lavender, lilac, or mauve were cautiously introduced, often paired with black accessories. These subtle shifts in color and material communicated the passage of time, the gradual easing of the most acute grief, all without a single spoken word, understood by anyone observing. For other family members, the rules were less stringent, but still meticulously observed. Daughters, sisters, and even more distant relatives would wear specific shades and types of black or subdued clothing for varying periods, each garment a quiet marker of their connection to the deceased and their participation in the collective ritual of remembrance. The very act of choosing these garments, of putting them on each day, was a quiet physical embodiment of mourning. Beyond clothing, the material culture of mourning extended to deeply personal jewelry and keepsakes. Mourning jewelry, often made from jet, onyx, or dark enamel, became incredibly popular. These pieces were not merely decorative, they were tangible tokens of remembrance, often engraved with dates or initials. Were adorned with symbols of grief like weeping willows or urns. Lockets frequently contained strands of the deceased's hair, a deeply personal and intimate memento preserved behind a tiny glass pane. Hair art, intricate designs woven from the hair of loved ones, sometimes braids, sometimes delicate floral patterns, sometimes even tiny portraits, was another remarkably popular form of remembrance, creating beautiful, often macabre keepsakes that could be worn as brooches or displayed under glass domes. Imagine the quiet concentration involved in meticulously crafting these delicate pieces, each knot and weave a silent meditation on loss, a physical act of preserving memory. Photography, a nascent art form gaining widespread popularity during this era, also played a significant and poignant role. Postmortem photography, though unsettling to modern sensibilities, was a common and accepted practice. For families who could not afford a living portrait or who had tragically lost a child prematurely, these photographs offered a last, precious image of the departed, allowing them to be remembered and integrated into the family's visual history. The process would have been solemn, the subjects carefully arranged, often made to appear as if sleeping peacefully, their faces serene, sometimes even posed with living family members, creating an eerie yet deeply moving tableau. The very architecture and atmosphere of the home could reflect mourning. During the immediate period after a death, drawing rooms and parlors were often arranged specifically for receiving callers who came to offer condolences, known as calling cards. The atmosphere would be hushed, conversations quiet, centered on shared memories, expressions of sympathy, and polite inquiries about the family's well-being. Even the stationery used for correspondence would often be bordered in black, the width of the border often indicating the degree of mourning and the closeness of the relationship to the deceased. These countless subtle details, from the closed piano lid to the hushed tones of conversation, created a pervasive atmosphere, a collective acknowledgement of loss that permeated daily life. This quiet, structured engagement with grief, while perhaps appearing stifling or overly ritualistic to us today, provided a crucial framework, a societal roadmap for navigating the profound disorientation and sorrow that death inevitably brings. It allowed for a public display of private sorrow, offering comfort in shared ritual and a deep respect for the departed, ensuring that their memory lingered, woven into the very fabric of Victorian society. The weight of remembrance was carried not just in the heart, but in the very textures, colors, and quiet customs of their world. It was a profound collective sigh in the face of impermanence. Let us now shift our focus, gently, to the pinnacle of Victorian society, to the grand estates, sprawling country houses, and stately London townhouses, where another form of female life unfolded. One often marked by a very different kind of quiet power, that of the aristocratic matriarch. While not experiencing the overt struggles of working-class women or the confined aspirations of the middle class, the women at the very top of the social hierarchy navigated a world of immense responsibility, rigid etiquette, and a subtle yet profound influence that shaped not only their immediate family, but often broader society. Their lives were not about earning a living in the conventional sense, or even directly managing household chores, but about upholding a lineage, maintaining a social order, safeguarding immense wealth and property, and subtly orchestrating the lives of many, many individuals beneath them. Imagine, if you will, the lady of the manor. Perhaps in her mid-40s or 50s, her hair impeccably styled in an elaborate coiffure, perhaps adorned with jewels or delicate lace. Her gown of rich silk, heavy velvet, or shimmering brocade, its rustle a gentle, almost musical accompaniment to her movements through the vast, ornate rooms of her ancestral home. Her mourning would not begin with the lacing of her own corset, for she would have highly trained ladies' maids to attend to such intimate matters, dressing her with practiced efficiency. Instead, her day would commence with a quiet review of the extensive household accounts, perhaps a detailed discussion with the housekeeper about the day's elaborate menus, the logistics of a planned dinner party, or a meeting with the head gardener regarding the estate's sprawling grounds, its formal gardens, and its agricultural yields. Her duties were largely supervisory and managerial, but they demanded a keen eye for detail, meticulous organizational skills, astute financial acumen, and a deep understanding of the intricate logistics of running a large household, which was, in essence, a small, self-contained economy, often employing dozens of staff members. She was the quiet, invisible engine that kept the grand machinery of aristocratic life running smoothly. The power of the aristocratic matriarch was rarely overt, loud, or confrontational. It was a power wielded through influence, through an intricate web of social connections, and through the quiet, consistent enforcement of unspoken rules and ancient traditions. She was the arbiter of social customs, the gatekeeper of invitations to exclusive social events, the discreet matchmaker for her children, nieces and nephews, subtly guiding them towards advantageous alliances. Her influence extended far beyond the immediate household, often reaching into the local community through extensive charitable endeavors, visiting the sick, overseeing village schools, funding local hospitals, or contributing significantly to various local projects. These acts of philanthropy, seemingly benign and altruistic, simultaneously reinforced her family's standing, their perceived benevolence, and their paternalistic role within the community, cementing their authority without explicit declarations. Imagine her sitting in her elegantly furnished drawing room or library, perhaps engaged in intricate needlework, writing voluminous correspondence, or quietly reading, while simultaneously observing, assessing, and gently guiding the social interactions around her. Her gaze, though perhaps soft and seemingly benign, often held an implicit authority, a quiet expectation that her wishes would be understood and adhered to. Marriage for aristocratic women was first and foremost an alliance of powerful families, a strategic union of vast wealth, ancestral lands, and political influence. While affection might develop over time, the initial and paramount consideration was often about preserving or enhancing the family's standing, consolidating properties, or forging advantageous political connections. A well-placed marriage could secure a family's future for generations, preventing the dissipation of wealth and ensuring the continuation of their name and influence. The aristocratic matriarch played a crucial, often behind-the-scenes, role in these complex negotiations, subtly influencing choices, assessing potential suitors and their family backgrounds, and ensuring that ancient traditions and expectations were upheld. Her quiet diplomacy, her shrewd observations, and her deep understanding of human nature could subtly shape the destinies of her children and grandchildren. The education of her daughters was also a significant responsibility, meticulously overseen. While not necessarily focused on vocational skills or earning a living, it emphasized accomplishments designed to make them suitable wives and hostesses for their future roles. Proficiency in languages, musical instruments, drawing, painting, and crucially, deportment and etiquette, all meticulously crafted to prepare them for the intricate social dance of aristocratic life. They were trained in the delicate art of conversation, the nuanced language of social graces, and the quiet resilience required to navigate a world of stringent expectations and unspoken rules. The emotional life of an aristocratic woman, while outwardly calm and composed, could be one of quiet suppression. Overt displays of strong emotion were often considered unseemly, a breach of decorum. Restraint, self-control, and an almost stoic acceptance of one's predetermined role were highly valued virtues, as personal desires. If they clashed with the imperative of family duty, tradition or social expectation were often quietly set aside, sublimated into other activities. The large, echoing halls of their grand homes, while offering unparalleled grandeur and comfort, could also, at times, feel isolating, a gilded cage. Yet within these defined confines, many women found profound ways to exercise agency and find personal fulfillment. They might excel in managing their vast estates, becoming adept at agricultural planning, tenant relations, and complex financial matters. They might foster intellectual pursuits, hosting salons where artists, writers, and thinkers gathered, or becoming influential patrons of the arts, shaping cultural trends. Their influence, though often hidden from public view, shaped the very fabric of society, from the fashion trends they initiated to the charitable causes they championed, all with a quiet authority that defined their unique and indispensable place in the Victorian world. Their lives, while seemingly insulated by wealth and privilege, were intricately woven into the broader tapestry of the era, threads of quiet power and profound responsibility, demonstrating that even within the most rigid structures, a silent strength could flourish, shaping the lives of many. Let us now delve deeper into an aspect of daily life that, for many Victorian women, was an ever-present physical reality, a constant companion that shaped their very form and movement: the corset. More than just an article of clothing, the corset was a powerful symbol, an external manifestation of deeply ingrained societal expectations regarding the female form, propriety, and decorum. It was a garment that silently embraced the body, molding it into the fashionable ideal of the era, and in doing so, subtly influenced posture, gait, respiration, and even, some might argue, the very experience of being a woman in that time. Imagine the young girl, perhaps as she approached her early teens, first being introduced to this foundational garment. It would not have been a sudden, dramatic imposition, but a gradual initiation, a rite of passage into young womanhood. The initial corsets, often referred to as stays, would be softer, less rigid. Made from lighter materials with fewer or more flexible whalebone or steel stays, designed primarily to encourage a particular posture. Straight-backed, shoulders gently drawn back, chest slightly forward. As she matured and her body developed, the corsets would become firmer, more structured, designed to create the desired hourglass silhouette: a small, cinched waist, a lifted and separated bust, and a smooth, elegant line over the hips. The process of lacing was often a quiet, intimate ritual, performed either by the wearer herself, if the design allowed, or, more commonly for women of means, by a personal maid or a female family member. The laces, sturdy and long, would be tightened gradually in a precise crisscross pattern, starting from the middle and working outwards until the desired level of support and shaping was achieved. The sensation would be one of firm enclosure, a constant pressure around the midsection, a feeling of being subtly held and sculpted. The materials themselves spoke of this quiet embrace: sturdy cotton coutil, often reinforced with multiple channels containing bone, or increasingly during the latter half of the century, steel stays. These stays, flexible yet firm, provided the necessary structure and support. The fabric would conform to the body over time, molding to its unique contours, almost becoming a second skin. While exaggerated tales of fainting from excessively tight lacing abound in popular culture, leading to dramatic swoons and desperate gasps, for most Victorian women, the corset was a familiar and largely accepted part of their daily wear. They learned to breathe differently, utilizing the upper chest and shoulders more than the diaphragm. Movement became more deliberate, perhaps a little more stately and graceful, as the corset encouraged a certain uprightness and inhibited sudden, unladylike movements. Imagine sitting for long hours, engaged in intricate needlework, reading improving literature, or entertaining callers, the corset providing a constant, reassuring support to the back and torso. Imagine taking a gentle stroll through a manicured park or along a quiet promenade. the rustle of the numerous layers of clothing accompanied by the gentle give and take of the corset's structured embrace, a soft, almost imperceptible symphony of movement and restraint. The social implications of the corset were profound and far-reaching. It was not merely about aesthetics or achieving a fashionable figure. It was deeply intertwined with respectability, modesty, and adherence to the visible codes of femininity. A well-corseted figure signaled adherence to societal norms, an embodiment of grace, propriety, and moral uprightness. To be uncorseted in public, for a woman of means, would have been almost unthinkable, akin to being improperly dressed or worse, morally lax. The corset therefore acted as a kind of silent guardian, enforcing a physical discipline that mirrored the emotional and social disciplines expected of women. It was a constant, gentle, yet pervasive reminder of their place, their role, their careful presentation to the world. It shaped not just their bodies, but subtly influenced their very comportment and public persona. Yet, within this silent embrace, there was also a certain quiet defiance, a subtle adaptability, and even for some, a sense of comfort. Women found ways to be comfortable within their corsets, choosing styles and lacing techniques that suited their individual bodies and various activities. The market for corsets was vast and diverse, offering a myriad of designs. From those intended for everyday wear and practicality to more elaborate, highly structured, and decorative garments for formal occasions and evening wear. The quiet innovation within the corset industry itself spoke to the continuous effort to balance fashion, function, and comfort within the prevailing silhouette. Designs evolved, incorporating different lacing patterns, materials, and shapes to better accommodate the wearer's needs. The corset, therefore, was not simply a singular tool of oppression, as it is sometimes simplistically portrayed, but a complex garment deeply woven into the fabric of Victorian life, shaping not just the physical body, but subtly influencing the very rhythm and experience of existence for millions of women. A constant, quiet, and intimately felt presence beneath their elegant gowns, an unseen foundation to their outward presentation. Its influence was pervasive, yet often unspoken, a truly silent embrace of an era's ideals. Let us now turn our attention to another remarkable figure whose life, though often overshadowed by the more widely recognized names of her era, tells a powerful and inspiring story of quiet persistence against the complex backdrop of Victorian society. Marked by both rigid social structures and the insidious realities of racial prejudice, Mary Seacole. Unlike Florence Nightingale, Mary Seacole was a woman of mixed race, born in Jamaica in 1805. During a time when the British Empire was still deeply entangled with slavery and its aftermath, her extraordinary life was a testament to indomitable entrepreneurial spirit, unparalleled practical nursing skills, and an unwavering determination to serve those in need, even when faced with the quiet but formidable barriers of systemic discrimination and prejudice. Imagine a young girl growing up in Jamaica, immersed from a tender age in the vibrant world of healing. She learned the art of traditional Creole medicine from her mother, a skilled doctress who not only used herbal remedies, but also managed a boarding house for invalid British soldiers. From an early age, Mary was deeply immersed in the world of care and healing, observing, learning, and developing a deep understanding of practical patient care and the nuances of various illnesses. Her education, though informal by European standards, was profound and comprehensive, rooted in hands-on experience, keen observation of human suffering, and an innate curiosity. She was, in her own words, penned in her later autobiography, not to be daunted by trifles, a quiet foreshadowing of the remarkable resilience and tenacity that would define her long and adventurous life. As a young woman, Mary embarked on extensive travels, a truly rare and audacious feat for a woman of her time and background, particularly as an independent, unescorted woman. She visited numerous countries in the Caribbean, Central America, and South America, including Cuba, Panama, and other regions, often providing medical assistance during devastating outbreaks of cholera, yellow fever, and other infectious diseases. She courageously nursed victims and developed her own treatments, often saving lives where others failed. She absorbed knowledge from various medical traditions, blending her inherited Creole remedies and knowledge of tropical diseases with Western medical practices and an astonishing degree of empirical observation. Her reputation as a skilled, compassionate, and effective healer grew steadily, not through official accolades or formal recognition, but through the quiet word of mouth of those she had helped, a testament to her practical abilities. Imagine her, a woman of color, confidently navigating bustling, often chaotic ports and unfamiliar, sometimes dangerous lands, her medical kit in hand, her quiet determination and unwavering sense of purpose, her constant companion and guide. She was, in essence, a pioneering figure in global health. Long before the modern concept of such a field existed, driven by an inherent profound desire to alleviate human suffering wherever she encountered it. When the Crimean War broke out in 1853, and news of the abysmal conditions for British soldiers reached England, Mary Seacole, already an experienced nurse, intrepid traveler and astute businesswoman, felt a profound and undeniable call to assist the struggling British forces. She traveled to London, expecting that her extensive skills, proven experience, and deep compassion would be readily welcomed by the authorities. However, to her profound disappointment, she faced repeated and polite but firm rejections from the official nursing establishment, including the War Office and the newly formed Nightingale Fund. The reasons for these rejections were never explicitly stated in formal terms, but the underlying racial prejudice prevalent in the rigid Victorian social hierarchy undoubtedly played a significant, if quiet, role in her repeated exclusion. Imagine the quiet frustration, the dignity with which she would have faced these polite but resolute refusals, her spirit undiminished by the injustice. Undeterred by these quiet rebuffs and the institutional barriers, Mary Seacole, demonstrating truly remarkable entrepreneurial spirit and unwavering self-reliance, financed her own arduous journey to Crimea. Upon arrival, she quickly established the British Hotel near the battlefield, not merely as a conventional inn, but as a mess table and comfortable resting place for invalids and convalescents. Crucially, she also set up a store, selling provisions to soldiers, but, more significantly, she provided invaluable medical care, nursing, and profound comfort to the sick and wounded directly on the battlefield itself, often under fire. She moved tirelessly among the wounded, distributing hot tea and nourishment, applying dressings, offering first aid, and, perhaps most importantly, providing words of encouragement and solace to men far from home. Her methods were practical, her compassion boundless, and her bravery unquestionable. She was known affectionately to the soldiers as Mother Seacole, a deeply felt testament to the maternal comfort, care, and practical assistance she provided, a powerful symbol of quiet humanity amidst the chaos of war. Mary Seacole's contributions in Crimea were distinct from Florence Nightingale's. While Nightingale focused on systemic reform and administration within the hospital structures, Seacole bravely brought care directly to the front lines, acting as an independent, self-funded nurse. Subtler and humanitarian, her quiet bravery, her extraordinary resourcefulness, and her unwavering commitment to those in desperate need, even in the face of significant societal and racial barriers, make her story a powerful and inspiring counter-narrative to the prevailing assumptions about Victorian women and their prescribed roles. After the war, despite her heroic efforts, she faced financial difficulties, but the soldiers she had helped, along with other admirers, rallied to her support, organizing benefits and helping her publish her remarkable autobiography, Wonderful Adventures of Mrs. Seacole in Many Lands. Her life, a quiet symphony of resilience, compassion, and indomitable spirit, reminds us that courage, profound impact, and quiet heroism can emerge from the most unexpected places, defying the restrictive norms of any given era, leaving an indelible mark on the landscape of human care. Her very existence was a quiet, living challenge to the narrow definitions of her time. Let us now, with a gentle and understanding approach, turn our gaze to a less visible, often unspoken, and frequently uncomfortable aspect of Victorian society: the hidden world of suppressed desires, and for some, the intricate, often desperate pathways to illicit pleasure that existed beneath the carefully constructed veneer of rigid morality. Victorian society, particularly in its public face and its idealized representations, championed strict codes of sexual propriety, absolute female modesty, and the absolute purity of women, especially within the domestic sphere. Yet, human desires, complex and multifaceted as they are, could not be entirely extinguished by social convention or stern pronouncements. The quiet suffering here was often the intense internal struggle, the unspoken longing, the quiet disillusionment, or the profound silent shame associated with actions or feelings deemed transgressive, forbidden, or simply unnatural by the prevailing moral order. Imagine the pervasive atmosphere in a society where public displays of affection, even between married couples, were largely frowned upon, where the very word sex was rarely, if ever, uttered in polite company, and where women, particularly, were expected to embody an almost ethereal purity, devoid of earthly desires. This pervasive moral framework, often rooted in evangelical Christianity, created an environment where natural impulses were frequently pushed inward, repressed, or sublimated, leading to a profound disconnect between outward appearance and inner reality. For many women, desires were either rigorously sublimated into intense domestic duties, channeled into artistic pursuits like music or painting, or directed towards fervent religious devotion. Alternatively, they simply remained unacknowledged, simmering beneath the placid surface of a seemingly perfect, ordered existence. This quiet suppression, a constant internal negotiation, a silent battle within oneself, could manifest in various insidious ways: a deep sense of unfulfillment, a pervasive melancholia, unexplained nervous complaints, or a profound sense of isolation, particularly if one felt their internal, emotional, or spiritual world did not align with the stringent external expectations placed upon them. The weight of unexpressed emotion could be crushing. However, where there are strict rules and unyielding moral codes, there are often quiet deviations, clandestine pathways. and hidden spaces where those rules are quietly broken or circumvented. For some women, particularly those from the most impoverished working-class backgrounds, or those who found themselves in desperate, unyielding circumstances with no other means of survival. The path to illicit pleasure, or, more accurately, to sheer economic survival, led to the often brutal and unforgiving world of prostitution. This was not a glamorous life as romanticized by some later narratives, but one overwhelmingly marked by quiet desperation, profound vulnerability, immense social stigma, and relentless exploitation. Imagine the dark, gaslit alleys of urban slums, the hushed whispers of solicitation, the constant gnawing fear of exposure, disease, and absolute social ruin. These women, often referred to with euphemisms like fallen women or unfortunates, existed on the extreme fringes of society, their lives a stark and tragic contrast to the idealized domesticity so fervently promoted by the middle and upper classes. Their suffering was rarely quiet in its immediate impact, but their stories were silenced, their lives deemed unmentionable, their very existence conveniently ignored by polite society, rendering their suffering invisible. Beyond the stark and tragic reality of overt prostitution, there were other, or subtle and hidden forms of transgression, often veiled in layers of secrecy and coded communication. For some women, especially those trapped in loveless or oppressive marriages with no prospect of escape, emotional or even physical intimacy outside of the marital bond was a hushed, dangerous, yet sometimes irresistible possibility. The rigid social structure of Victorian England meant that divorce was exceedingly difficult, prohibitively expensive, and almost always socially ruinous, leaving many women effectively imprisoned in unhappy unions, with profound implications for their emotional and psychological well-being. Imagine the quiet exchanges, the furtive glances across a crowded drawing room, the shared secrets that hinted at a world of passion and connection existing beyond the strictures of Victorian morality. These illicit affairs, if discovered, carried immense social consequences, leading to immediate ostracism, public scandal, and often irreparable ruin, particularly for the woman involved whose reputation was far more fragile than a man's. The pervasive anxiety of discovery, the constant need for discretion, the elaborate deceptions required to maintain secrecy, created a different kind of quiet suffering, a life lived on the knife edge of exposure, a perpetual silent tension. The burgeoning popularity of clandestine literature, sensational novels, and inexpensive penny dreadfuls also offered a quiet, vicarious escape for some women, exploring themes of forbidden passion, thrilling adventure, and even outright transgression that were conspicuously absent from more respectable publications. For women yearning for a world beyond their circumscribed reality, trapped by societal expectations, these stories offered a tantalizing, if fictional, glimpse into forbidden emotional landscapes, a quiet outlet for suppressed desires and frustrated longings. The very existence of this hidden world, with its nuances of desperation, subtle defiance, and quiet longing, serves as a powerful reminder that beneath the polished, seemingly placid surface of Victorian society, human nature, with all its inherent complexities, contradictions, and irrepressible desires, continued to assert itself, often in the quietest, most private, and most clandestine of ways, leaving traces of unacknowledged lives, unheard whispers, and a profound undercurrent of unspoken yearning that shaped the era as much as its grand public pronouncements. Let us now gently consider the figure central to the pervasive Victorian ideal of domesticity, the very heart of what was deemed a respectable and moral society. The middle-class wife, while her life might appear outwardly constrained by a myriad of societal expectations and strict gender roles, she often wielded a significant, albeit silent and largely unacknowledged, authority within her own carefully delineated sphere, the home. Her world was meticulously defined by concepts of respectability, efficient domestic management, meticulous budgeting, and the diligent nurturing of family values. Yet within these carefully constructed boundaries, she often found profound pathways to influence, quiet power, and a deep sense of purpose, shaping the lives of those around her in subtle, pervasive ways. Imagine her, the diligent mistress of a comfortable, perhaps terraced, house in a burgeoning Victorian town or a quiet suburban street. Her morning would begin not with the heavy physical labor of a working-class woman, but with the careful and systematic oversight of her domestic staff, however few they might be. Perhaps a single general maid, or a cook and a housemaid in slightly more prosperous households. She was the manager, the strategist, the meticulous planner, ensuring the smooth and efficient running of the entire household machinery. This involved a seemingly endless array of tasks, supervising the cook in meal preparation, issuing precise instructions to the housemaid regarding cleaning routines, overseeing the laundering of delicate linens, and meticulously planning the family's daily menus and grocery orders, ensuring thrift and efficiency. These were not trivial tasks. They required considerable organizational skills, astute budgeting prowess, and an exacting eye for detail, as well as the ability to manage staff effectively and discreetly. The efficiency, comfort, and moral atmosphere of the home were direct reflections of her capabilities, and her competence brought her quiet prestige and respect within her social circle, and crucially, within her family. She was, in essence, the quiet CEO of her domestic realm, a silent conductor of the daily symphony of household life, ensuring harmony and order. Her primary and most sacrosanct duty, beyond the meticulous management of the household, was the cultivation of a morally upright, emotionally nurturing, and physically comfortable environment for her husband and children. The Victorian home was widely conceptualized as a sanctuary, a sacred refuge from the harsh, competitive, and often morally ambiguous realities of the industrial and commercial world outside. It was the wife's paramount role to create and assiduously maintain this haven, transforming it into a bastion of peace, morality, and domestic bliss. This involved tirelessly educating younger children before they went to school, instilling in them sound moral values and good manners, and fostering an atmosphere of order, refinement, and piety. Her influence on the moral and spiritual development of her children was considered absolutely paramount, shaping the next generation. Imagine her reading aloud to her children by the comforting glow of the fire, teaching her daughters intricate needlework or polite social graces, gently guiding her sons in their early lessons, or patiently correcting their manners at the dinner table. Each act a quiet, deeply significant investment in the future of her family, and by extension, society itself. Social engagement was another crucial and time-consuming aspect of her role, requiring both strategic thinking and social finesse. She was responsible for maintaining and enhancing the family's social standing, which often involved orchestrating a complex calendar of social calls, hosting formal tea parties, and managing voluminous correspondence. These seemingly light and pleasant activities were in fact complex rituals of social negotiation, requiring immense diplomacy, charm, and an intricate understanding of the unspoken rules of etiquette. A well-received social call, an elegant and successful tea party, or a series of carefully worded invitations could subtly enhance the family's reputation, forge new alliances, and open doors to advantageous connections for her husband and children. Her conversational skills, her ability to make guests feel at ease, and her knowledge of appropriate topics of discussion were all silent tools of influence, contributing to the family's social capital. While a middle-class wife rarely, if ever, engaged in overt political or economic activity outside the confines of the home, her influence was profoundly felt through her husband, whom she was expected to support and inspire. She might offer quiet counsel, provide essential moral support and emotional solace, and create an environment conducive to his success in the public sphere, acting as his silent, indispensable confidant. Her social connections, fostered through her diligent efforts, could indirectly benefit his business ventures, professional standing, or social aspirations. Her opinions, though perhaps expressed only privately in the quiet intimacy of their shared rooms, could subtly but significantly shape his perspectives and decisions. This indirect influence, often referred to as behind-the-scenes power or pillow talk, was a recognized and often highly effective form of agency for Victorian women, allowing them to exert control without overtly challenging the patriarchal structure. The quiet suffering for some middle-class wives might have been a pervasive sense of intellectual stagnation, a feeling of being confined and circumscribed by the domestic sphere. When their keen minds yearned for broader engagement with the world of ideas, politics, or professional pursuits. For others, it was the relentless pressure to maintain immaculate appearances, to project an image of perfect domesticity and effortless grace, even when faced with significant financial anxieties, difficult children, or profound personal challenges that were never to be publicly acknowledged. Yet within these defined boundaries, many women found immense satisfaction, a deep sense of purpose, and a profound meaning in their lives. They were the unsung architects of their family's comfort and respectability, the steadfast guardians of its moral compass, and the silent, indispensable pillars upon which the entire edifice of Victorian middle-class society rested. Their lives, though not dramatic in the public eye, were rich with quiet responsibilities, profound dedication, and a deeply felt sense of contribution, demonstrating a quiet power that was both pervasive and foundational to the era. Let us now, with a profound sense of gravity and a quiet understanding, descend from the comfortable drawing rooms and elegant dining halls to turn our focus to the lives of the vast majority of Victorian women, particularly those who formed the invisible backbone of the entire social structure. The domestic servants, their existence was often a relentless cycle of quiet toil, marked by impossibly early mornings and impossibly late nights. Their lives meticulously structured by the needs and rhythms of the families they served. Yet even within this demanding and often dehumanizing existence, there were also fleeting moments of quiet community, remarkable resilience, and a subtle but persistent sense of purpose that allowed them to endure. Imagine a young woman, perhaps as young as 12 or 14, often scarcely more than a child, leaving her humble rural home or the crowded, unsanitary tenements of a burgeoning city to enter service. Her new world would be one of strict hierarchy, rigid rules, impossibly long hours, and meager wages. The day began before dawn, often in a cold, damp scullery or a dimly lit basement kitchen. Far from the warmth and comfort of the family above, the very first tasks might involve the arduous process of lighting fires in multiple fireplaces across the house, hauling heavy scuttles of coal up endless flights of stairs, fetching large buckets of fresh water for washing, and preparing the entire house for the family's comfortable awakening. The pervasive silence of the early morning, broken only by the quiet clatter of pots and pans, the hiss of kindling catching fire, or the faint creak of floorboards above, would accompany these initial essential duties, setting the tone for a day of unending labor. The variety of roles within domestic service was vast and rigidly defined, each with its own specific duties and hierarchy, from the lowest-ranking scullery maid, responsible for the unending washing of dishes, pots and kitchen utensils, her hands perpetually chapped and raw, to the parlor maid, who served meals with quiet efficiency and maintained the public rooms with meticulous care, to the highly esteemed lady's maid who attended intimately to the mistress of the house, assisting with dressing and hair, and serving as a personal confidant. Each role had its specific duties, its routines, its unspoken rules of conduct and appearance. The work itself was relentlessly physically demanding, carrying heavy coal scuttles up flights of stairs, scrubbing vast expanses of floors on hands and knees until they gleamed, polishing endless pieces of silverware, brass, and furniture, and perpetually cleaning every surface, battling the pervasive dust and grime of the era. Imagine the constant dull ache in the back, the persistent dampness and rawness of the hands, the lingering smell of polish, soap, and stale food, a constant sensory backdrop to their quiet suffering. The quiet suffering of domestic servants was often one of profound invisibility and a lack of personal autonomy. They were, in essence, on call almost 24 hours a day, their lives meticulously dictated by the needs and schedules of their employers. Personal privacy was minimal to non-existent. They often shared cramped, unheated quarters with other servants, with little personal space or belongings. Socializing was severely limited, often restricted to interactions within the servants' hall, and opportunities for formal education or significant personal advancement were rare, offering little hope of escape from their station. Meals were often eaten quickly in the servants' hall, a space that was both a haven of shared experience and a constant reminder of their subordinate position within the household. The quiet dignity with which many servants carried out their arduous duties, enduring demanding conditions, often unreasonable expectations, and frequently condescending treatment from their employers, speaks volumes about their inherent resilience and strength of character. They often formed an essential, if unacknowledged, bond of loyalty to the families they served. Yet within the rigid confines of service, a powerful and often deeply supportive sense of community frequently developed below stairs. In the bustling kitchens, the cramped sculleries, and the communal servants' halls, profound bonds were forged through shared hardship and mutual understanding. Shared laughter, whispered confidences during rare breaks, and essential mutual support were vital for coping with the relentless demands of their lives. Imagine the quiet camaraderie during a brief break for tea, the shared stories and complaints as they meticulously prepared vegetables for dinner, or the collective effort to help a fellow servant in distress. They formed their own microcosm within the grand house, with its own internal hierarchies, inside jokes, and unspoken understandings, a private world hidden from their employers. Sundays might offer a rare few hours of precious freedom, a chance to visit distant family, attend church, or take a brief, restorative walk, a brief but vital respite from the relentless grind. For many young women, domestic service was not a choice but an inescapable necessity, often the only available path to economic independence and a stable livelihood when other opportunities were non-existent. It offered a guaranteed roof over their heads, regular, if monotonous meals, and a small but steady wage that could be sent home to support struggling families in the countryside or saved meticulously for a future. Perhaps a hope of marriage and establishing a humble home of their own. The quiet resilience of these countless women who sustained the elegant and comfortable world above stairs through their relentless, unacknowledged labor is a profound testament to their enduring strength, adaptability, and quiet fortitude. Their lives, largely unseen, unheard, and uncelebrated in the grand narratives of Victorian England, were fundamental, a silent but indispensable force underpinning the entire society. Their calloused hands, though often hidden by their work, quietly shaped the very comforts and conveniences that defined an era, a constant, often overlooked, hum in the engine of Victorian progress. Let us now gently shift our focus to an individual whose quiet, unwavering determination carved a truly revolutionary path for women in a profession previously closed to them, a domain considered utterly unsuitable for the female sex. Elizabeth Blackwell. Born in Bristol, England in 1821, Elizabeth's family emigrated to the United States when she was a child, seeking new opportunities and escaping a more rigid class structure. Her extraordinary story is one of unwavering resolve, of quietly, persistently pushing against entrenched prejudices and formidable societal barriers to achieve a profound and lasting breakthrough that would ripple through generations, opening doors for countless women who would follow. Imagine a young woman, intelligent, intellectually curious, and possessing a deep sense of moral rectitude, growing up in a progressive family that valued education, social reform, and individual conscience. Unlike many of her peers, Elizabeth felt no particular calling to the conventional female roles of wife and mother, or to the restricted sphere of domesticity. Her true calling, a profound sense of purpose, emerged from a deeply personal and poignant experience. The initial spark for her arduous medical journey came from a conversation with a dying female friend, who in her final moments lamented that her suffering might have been significantly lessened if she had been cared for by a female physician, expressing a desire for a doctor who could understand her female experience with empathy and discretion. This quiet, poignant conversation planted a powerful seed in Elizabeth's mind, a seed of conviction that women had a vital and much-needed role to play in the healing arts, a role that was being unjustly denied to them. However, the path to becoming a qualified doctor in the mid-19th century was formidable, indeed seemingly insurmountable, especially for a woman. Medical schools were exclusively for men, steeped in centuries of male tradition and scientific practice. And the very idea of a woman studying anatomy, attending lectures alongside male students, or performing dissections in a coeducational environment was considered scandalous, improper, even abhorrent by much of conservative society and the male medical establishment. Elizabeth faced rejection after rejection in her applications to various medical institutions. Each reply was a polite but firm refusal, often citing the impossibility, impropriety, or sheer unsuitability of her request, sometimes even suggesting she'd pursue a more appropriate female profession, like teaching or becoming a governess. Imagine the quiet frustration, the persistent disappointment, the gnawing sense of injustice, yet also the growing, unwavering resolve that hardened with each closed door, fueling her determination rather than diminishing it. Her breakthrough finally came in a most unexpected and almost miraculous way in 1847. When Geneva Medical College in upstate New York, perhaps out of a mixture of amusement, jest, or genuine open-mindedness on the part of some faculty, decided to put her application to a vote among the male students. The faculty reportedly expected the students to reject her outright, believing it would settle the matter. Instead, the students, perhaps finding it a humorous novelty or out of a surprising display of progressive thought, voted unanimously to admit her, a decision they likely quickly came to regret as her presence disrupted their traditional routines. Her arrival was met with a mixture of intense curiosity, thinly veiled hostility, and occasional awkwardness from her male peers, and often outright ostracism by members of the local community who considered her an aberration. She was often forced to sit separately in lectures, her presence a silent, profound challenge to centuries of tradition and male dominance, yet she absorbed knowledge with quiet intensity, diligently taking notes and asking incisive questions. She was meticulous in her studies, determined not to give anyone a single reason to question her capabilities, intellect, or dedication based solely on her gender. Despite the isolating nature of her experience, Elizabeth persevered with quiet dignity, unwavering focus, and extraordinary academic rigor. She graduated first in her class in 1849, a truly remarkable achievement, becoming the first woman to earn a medical degree in the United States and indeed in modern history. This was not a loud, dramatic triumph celebrated with fanfare, but a quiet, irrefutable achievement that spoke volumes. Her journey, however, was far from over. She faced continued systemic discrimination in finding employment and establishing a medical practice. Hospitals refused to hire her, even in minor capacities, and many patients, both male and female, were hesitant or outright refused to consult a female doctor. Deeply ingrained societal prejudices, proving difficult to dislodge. Undeterred by these persistent obstacles, Elizabeth, along with her equally determined sister Emily and Dr. Marie Zakorzuska, went on to establish the New York Infirmary for Indigent Women and Children in 1857. This institution was groundbreaking in multiple respects. It provided much-needed medical care to the impoverished and marginalized. It offered invaluable clinical experience and training for aspiring female medical students. And it was entirely founded, managed, and staffed by women, creating a vital space of female empowerment and professional excellence. It was a powerful testament to their quiet, collective resilience, their unwavering belief in the vital necessity of female physicians, and their enduring commitment to social justice. Elizabeth Blackwell's life was a masterclass in quiet perseverance, demonstrating that profound social change and the breaking down of centuries-old barriers can often begin not with loud protests or violent revolutions, but with a single, resolute individual who refuses to be deterred by the silent weight of convention, carving a meticulous, deliberate path for countless others to follow, leaving an indelible legacy of access and opportunity. Her quiet brilliance illuminated a path for generations to come. As we continue our gentle journey, let us now explore a fascinating and at times unsettling aspect of Victorian culture that provided a quiet counterpoint to the era's rigid scientific advancements. Burgeoning industrialization and often stern religious orthodoxy. The widespread and deeply felt interest in spiritualism and the occult. For many, particularly women who were often denied public intellectual or professional outlets, these practices offered a hidden, clandestine space for agency, comfort, solace, and exploration of the unseen, often within the hushed intimacy of the room. It represented a quiet quest for meaning beyond the tangible world. Imagine a society grappling with rapid, disorienting industrialization, astonishing scientific discoveries that challenge traditional biblical beliefs, and devastating losses from prevalent diseases like tuberculosis, cholera, and child mortality, as well as the traumas of war. In this context, the profound human desire for connection with a transcendent realm, or, more specifically, with deceased loved ones, is omnipresent and deeply poignant. Spiritualism, which posited that the spirits of the dead could and did communicate with the living, emerged as a significant and surprisingly widespread social movement, gaining traction across all social classes, though often practiced more discreetly in middle and upper class homes. Often conducted in darkened or dimly lit rooms, became popular social gatherings, offering both entertainment and genuine solace. Mediums, who were predominantly women, claimed to facilitate communication through various phenomena, rapping sounds on tables, levitating objects, automatic writing, or direct vocalizations, where a spirit voice would speak through the medium. The atmosphere in such a room would be hushed, expectant, filled with a quiet anticipation, a collective holding of breath, a profound yearning for connection. For many Victorian women, spiritualism offered a unique and potent avenue for expression, influence, and even a degree of authority that was largely denied to them in conventional patriarchal society. As mediums, they could command attention, offer guidance, transmit messages of comfort or wisdom, and even express opinions or insights that might otherwise be considered inappropriate or unseemly for a woman to voice in public. In a world where women were largely confined to the domestic sphere, where their public roles were strictly limited, the room provided a rare and compelling stage for their talents, whether genuine or performed. Imagine a woman, perhaps outwardly demure and reserved in her daily life, suddenly becoming the conduit for powerful messages from the beyond, her voice taking on new tones, her body seemingly possessed or controlled by an external, otherworldly force, captivating her audience. This was a form of quiet, often unintentional, rebellion against the strictures of their daily mundane lives. The performances, whether sincerely believed to be spiritual manifestations or skillfully executed theatrical displays, allowed them a temporary transcendence of their restrictive social roles, providing a sense of power that was otherwise unavailable. Beyond the specific practice of spiritualism, was a broader and pervasive fascination with the occult, mesmerism, phrenology, palmistry, astrology, and various forms of divination and fortune-telling. These practices offered alternative, often mystical ways of understanding the self, human destiny, the complexities of personality, and the hidden mysteries of the universe. For those disillusioned with the perceived coldness of traditional dogmatic religion, or for those seeking answers beyond the rational confines of conventional science, the occult provided a quiet, mystical solace, a sense of wonder and possibility. Books, Pamphlets and articles on these subjects were widely read, often covertly, allowing individuals to explore forbidden knowledge and unorthodox ideas in the privacy of their own homes, feeding a quiet intellectual curiosity, a quiet ritual of consulting a spiritualist guide, experimenting with automatic writing, or even simply reading a book on esoteric subjects offered a sense of control, insight, or enchantment in a world that often felt unpredictable, overwhelming, and rigidly ordered. However, this hidden world of the spiritual and occult was not without its quiet suffering, its profound dangers, and its insidious deceptions. Many mediums, despite some genuine belief, were eventually exposed as frauds, leading to public humiliation, social ruin, and the widespread discrediting of the movement in the eyes of the skeptical. For those who genuinely believed in their abilities or the authenticity of the communications, the emotional and psychological toll of constantly connecting with the deceased, or the intense psychological strain of acting as a conduit for otherworldly entities, could be profound and deeply unsettling. Furthermore, engaging in occult practices carried significant social risks, inviting suspicion, accusations of hysteria, moral depravity, or even outright madness. The quiet whispers of scandal and disapproval often followed those deeply involved in such activities, threatening their hard-won respectability. Yet, despite the controversies, the skepticism of mainstream society, and the very real dangers, the allure of spiritualism and the broader occult persisted throughout the Victorian era, evolving and adapting. It spoke to a deep and enduring human need for meaning, for connection beyond the grave, for a glimpse beyond the veil of the material world. For countless women, it offered a clandestine space for emotional release, a sense of empowerment in a disempowering age, and a profound exploration of spiritual frontiers, all conducted within the hushed, expectant quiet of a world seeking answers in the unseen. These hidden currents of belief, these quiet yearnings for the transcendent, flowed subtly beneath the polished surface of Victorian respectability, a testament to the enduring human quest for understanding the unknown, and a poignant marker of the inner lives that often defied outward appearances. Let us conclude this segment with a gentle contemplation, ascending to the very apex of Victorian society to consider the woman who embodied and in many ways defined the era itself, Queen Victoria. Her extraordinary reign spanning an unprecedented 63 years from 1837 to 1901, it's a period of monumental social, industrial, technological, and imperial change. Yet beneath the grand pronouncements of state, the immense political power of the British Empire, and the formal ceremonial duties, her personal life, particularly her domestic sphere, and her deeply felt family values, often revealed a profound, albeit quiet, influence that shaped not only her own vast family, but by powerful extension, the moral and social fabric of the entire nation. Imagine a young woman, barely 18 years old, thrust onto the throne of one of the world's most powerful nations. Her early years as monarch were marked by a steep learning curve in the intricacies of statecraft and constitutional monarchy. Guided by her first prime minister, the worldly and experienced Lord Melbourne, who acted as a surrogate father figure, but it was her marriage to her beloved cousin, Prince Albert of Saxe-Coburg in Gotha in 1840, that profoundly shaped her personal and public life, becoming the central anchor of her existence. Albert, intelligent, diligent, deeply principled, and profoundly committed to his adopted country, quickly became her indispensable partner, chief advisor, and intellectual confidant. Their marriage was, by all accounts, one of deep affection, profound respect, and intense intellectual collaboration, a quiet, unshakable anchor in the whirlwind of national and international affairs, a bond that transcended mere royal duty. Victoria's influence as a monarch was increasingly exercised indirectly, through a deep and abiding trust in Albert's shrewd counsel, and, after his premature death, through her remarkably long-serving and diverse prime ministers. Her reign saw the monarchy subtly transform from an active political force, often intervening directly in governmental matters, to a powerful symbol of national unity, moral rectitude, and imperial grandeur. She became the very embodiment of the rising middle-class virtues that dominated the era. Rigorous domesticity, unwavering family values, strict moral propriety, and a deeply felt sense of duty. The quiet example she set within her own rapidly expanding family with her 9 children became a widely emulated template for the nation. Homes across Britain proudly displayed portraits and engravings of the royal family, aspiring to replicate the domestic harmony, industry, and respectability they seemed to represent. This was a form of silent, pervasive cultural influence, far more impactful and insidious than any direct political decree or public pronouncement, shaping the very aspirations of her subjects. After Albert's devastating and premature death in 1861, Victoria entered a period of deep, profound, and prolonged mourning. Largely withdrawing from public life and ceremonial duties, retreating into a private world of grief. This quiet grief, while criticized by some as excessive or detrimental to the monarchy's public image, paradoxically deepened her connection with a nation that also understood loss and personal sorrow. Her decision to wear black for the rest of her life, a period of 40 years, became a powerful, visible symbol of her unwavering devotion to her deceased husband, and, by extension, a reflection of the era's pervasive and elaborate mourning customs. Her steadfastness and her sorrow, her quiet resilience in the face of immense personal tragedy, resonated deeply with her subjects, who saw in her a mirror of their own human experience. She became the Widow of Windsor, a figure of quiet, enduring strength through profound personal pain. Victoria's later years saw her gradually return to a more public role, though her approach remained largely symbolic, representing the empire rather than actively governing it. Her Jubilee celebrations, particularly the Golden Jubilee in 1887 and the Diamond Jubilee in 1897, were enormous national and imperial events, grand demonstrations of British imperial power, its prosperity, and national pride, showcasing the vastness of her dominion. Yet, even in these spectacular and joyous displays, Victoria often remained a quiet, dignified, and somewhat diminutive presence, receiving accolades and adoration with an almost stoic grace. Her strength lay not in fiery rhetoric or dramatic actions, but in her unwavering commitment to duty, her deep sense of responsibility to her people, and her consistent, lifelong embodiment of the moral and domestic values she so profoundly believed in. Her quiet was not weakness, but a profound, unshakable inner resolve. Her domestic life at favored residences like Osborne House on the Isle of Wight or Balmoral Castle in the Scottish Highlands, away from the intense glare and formality of London, was one of quiet routine, intimate family gatherings, and a genuine, deeply felt love for the simpler pleasures of country life, for walking, riding, and sketching. She was a prolific letter writer, maintaining a vast correspondence that provided a quiet, detailed chronicle of her thoughts, feelings, and observations on matters both personal and political. Her voluminous diaries, though heavily edited by her daughter Beatrice, reveal a woman of strong opinions, deep affections, occasional bursts of temper, and a profound sense of self. Queen Victoria's reign was not only about massive political expansion, unprecedented industrial progress, and social stratification. It was also profoundly defined by the quiet, pervasive influence of a powerful matriarchal figure who, through her personal example, her unwavering commitment to duty, and her profound embodiment of a set of values, shaped the very moral, social, and cultural fabric of an entire epoch, leaving an indelible mark that continues to resonate, a silent, powerful echo through time. It's deeply influencing what it meant to be a woman in the Victorian age, even at its very summit. Let us now, with a profound sense of gravity and a gentle acknowledgement of hardship, descend from the sunlit drawing rooms and turn our focus to the bustling, yet often suffocating, world of the Victorian factory. For countless working-class women, this was their daily, inescapable reality, a life overwhelmingly defined by relentless, repetitive tasks, impossibly long hours, and challenging, often dangerous conditions. While we often associate Victorian industry with grand, imposing machines, powerful male industrialists, and the burgeoning wealth of the empire, it was frequently the quiet, persistent, and unacknowledged labor of women that kept the massive gears of industry turning, forming the very foundation of the era's economic progress. Their suffering was not always silent in its expression, but their individual voices were often unheard, their struggles largely unacknowledged, and certainly unromanticized in the official narratives of national prosperity. Imagine stepping into the cacophony of a textile mill or the dimly lit depths of a match factory. The overwhelming sound would be the constant clatter, clang, and roar of intricate machinery, a pervasive, deafening symphony that permeated every moment of the working day, making conversation difficult and often impossible. The very air would be thick and heavy with dust, fine fibers of cotton or wool, noxious chemical fumes, or pervasive coal soot. Depending on the specific industry, whether it was textiles, matchmaking, pottery, or countless other burgeoning manufactories, the smell would be a pungent, pervasive mix of raw materials, human perspiration, industrial lubricants, and often the acrid scent of chemicals or burning coal. The light, frequently dim and artificial even during the day, filtered through grime-covered windows or provided by gas jets, cast long shifting shadows, revealing the endless, monotonous rows of looms, spinning frames, or assembly lines stretching into the distance. Women, and tragically often children, comprised a significant and indispensable portion of the factory workforce, particularly in textile mills, where their perceived dexterity and smaller hands were deemed suitable for delicate, repetitive work, making them a cheap and easily exploitable labor force. The work itself was often agonizingly monotonous, relentlessly repetitive, and profoundly physically demanding. Imagine standing for 12, 14, or even 16 hours a day, 6 days a week, performing precisely the same action over and over again for thousands upon thousands of repetitions, feeding raw cotton into a hungry machine, meticulously tying broken threads on a spinning frame with nimble fingers, assembling minute components, or dipping matchsticks into dangerous chemical solutions. The rhythm of the factory was relentless and unforgiving, dictated by the unceasing thrum of the machinery, with little opportunity for genuine rest, variation, or mental engagement. Accidents were disturbingly frequent, a silent horror underlying the daily grind. Fingers caught in rapidly moving gears, limbs crushed by heavy machinery, hair dragged into moving belts, or lungs permanently damaged by inhaling airborne particles and toxic fumes. These were not dramatic explosions that made headlines, but often quiet, sudden mishaps that left lasting, disfiguring injuries and lifelong disabilities, permanently altering the trajectory of a life. The quiet, pervasive suffering of physical exhaustion, of aching muscles and strained eyes, of numb fingers and constant headaches, was a relentless, ever-present companion to their working days. Beyond the immediate physical toll, there was the profound and debilitating quiet anxiety of precarious employment. Wages were pitifully low, barely enough to sustain an individual, let alone to support a family. A single missed day due to illness, a sudden downturn in trade, a minor infraction of factory rules, or a dispute with an overbearing overseer could mean immediate dismissal and destitution. The grim specter of the workhouse, a dreaded institution symbolizing utter destitution and public shame, loomed constantly over many working-class families as a last, terrifying resort. For married women, the factory work was often not a choice for personal fulfillment, but an essential, grueling supplement to a husband's meager and often unreliable income. A quiet, desperate struggle to put food on the table, keep a roof over their children's heads, and stave off starvation. Imagine the unimaginable challenge of balancing the physically draining demands of the factory with the equally pressing responsibilities of motherhood and domestic life. Rushing home after a grueling shift to prepare a meal, mend clothes by flickering gaslight, and care for small, often sickly children, only to face another relentless grinding day at dawn. Despite the profound hardships, the inherent dangers, and the relentless exploitation, there was also a powerful and often unacknowledged quiet resilience, a profound sense of solidarity that emerged organically from shared experience. Women working side by side in the oppressive conditions, sharing whispered conversations over the incessant din of machinery, offering small acts of kindness, mutual understanding, and quiet support to one another. They might form informal networks of assistance, helping each other through illnesses, family crises, or periods of unemployment. Though large-scale strikes and organized labor movements were often led by men and gained more public attention, women also participated in quiet acts of resistance, subtle forms of negotiation, or collective withdrawals of labor, advocating for slightly better wages, marginally improved conditions, or greater respect within their limited spheres of influence. Their lives, largely unseen, unheard, and uncelebrated by polite society, were a powerful testament to enduring strength, remarkable adaptability, and a quiet, unyielding determination in the face of relentless labor and profound adversity. Their hands, though often calloused and scarred, quietly shaped the very foundations of Victorian industrial power, a constant, often overlooked human hum in the massive, relentless engine of the era's progress, a testament to the unyielding spirit of the common woman. Let us now, with respectful attention and a deep sense of admiration, turn our focus to a remarkable woman who dedicated her entire life to alleviating a profound and often ignored form of quiet suffering and injustice inflicted upon other women. Josephine Butler. Her extraordinary story is one of immense moral courage, unwavering conviction, and a quiet but utterly relentless crusade against the legalized subjugation and systemic exploitation of women in Victorian England, and a powerful testament to the transformative power of persistent, principled advocacy in the face of overwhelming opposition. Imagine a woman of deep religious conviction, profound intellectual capabilities, and an almost boundless empathy. Born into a prosperous and reform-minded family in 1828, Josephine Butler's early life, while comfortable, was marked by profound personal tragedy, including the devastating death of her beloved young daughter, Eva, from an accidental fall. This quiet, unbearable grief, rather than consuming her, seemed to transform into a powerful, almost sacred impulse for social justice and compassion for the suffering of others. She initially became involved in philanthropic work, visiting distressed women in workhouses, rescue homes, and prisons, witnessing firsthand the brutal realities of their lives, their poverty, their shame, and their desperation. These quiet, intimate encounters, these direct observations of human degradation and systemic injustice, ignited within her a lifelong, unshakable passion for fundamental social reform. Her most significant, and indeed most controversial campaign was launched against the infamous contagious diseases, acts of the 1860s. These acts were ostensibly passed by the British Parliament to control the spread of venereal disease within the armed forces and naval ports, a pragmatic public health measure in the eyes of the establishment. However, their draconian provisions allowed for the mandatory, often humiliating and invasive internal examination and arbitrary detention of women suspected of being prostitutes in specific garrison towns, without any charge, trial, or due process of law. Women, often from the poorest and most vulnerable sections of society, were subjected to unspeakably degrading examinations and forcibly interned in lock hospitals if found to be infected, effectively imprisoned for their perceived moral failings. Men, conversely, the source of the disease, faced no such scrutiny, no forced examinations, and no detention. A glaring and deeply hypocritical double standard. Josephine Butler immediately recognized these acts for what they truly were: a gross violation of fundamental civil liberties, a profound injustice that specifically targeted and brutally criminalized women while conveniently ignoring the male side of the equation and undermining the very principle of equality before the law. Her campaign, formerly known as the Ladies' National Association for the Repeal of the Contagious Diseases Act, was a quiet but deeply revolutionary movement for its time. It was revolutionary precisely because it forced respectable, middle and upper-class women to openly discuss and publicly challenge issues considered utterly unmentionable and scandalous in polite society. Prostitution, venereal disease, female sexuality, and the gross abuses of state power against women's bodies. Butler and her courageous associates faced immense public scorn, vitriolic ridicule in the press, and even physical threats and personal attacks for daring to speak publicly about such deeply taboo subjects. They were contemptuously called shrieking sisters, unsexed women, and impure for stepping out of their prescribed domestic sphere to confront a moral abomination. Imagine the quiet courage, the sheer moral fortitude it required to stand on a public platform, to deliver powerful speeches, to write scathing pamphlets, and to relentlessly lobby powerful politicians, knowing full well that your reputation, your social standing, and even your personal safety were constantly under attack from powerful forces. Butler's strategy was one of quiet, persistent moral suasion, meticulous organization, and relentless public education. She traveled tirelessly across the country, holding countless public meetings, gathering thousands of signatures for petitions and fearlessly exposing the brutal realities and inherent injustices of the acts to anyone who would listen. She appealed not to radical political ideologies, but to fundamental principles of justice, human dignity, Christian morality, and the sanctity of individual liberty. She vividly highlighted the profound double standard, the way in which society mercilessly punished the vulnerable female victim while excusing or even tacitly condoning the male perpetrator. Her quiet eloquence, her unwavering conviction, and her unflagging commitment to her cause gradually, almost imperceptibly, began to sway public opinion and chip away at the moral complacency of the era. She demonstrated that persistent ethical arguments could slowly change hearts and minds. After nearly 2 decades of tireless campaigning, often in the face of seemingly overwhelming and entrenched opposition, the Contagious Diseases Acts were finally suspended in 1883 and then completely repealed in 1886. This was a monumental victory, a profound testament to Josephine Butler's quiet fortitude, her unshakable moral compass, and the astonishing power of organized, principled, and persistent resistance led by women. Her legacy extended far beyond this single, albeit colossal, campaign. She became a powerful, inspiring voice for women's rights globally, fighting for access to higher education for women, for legal reforms that protected women and children, and for the abolition of sex trafficking. Her life serves as a quiet but resounding reminder that profound social change and the redress of deep injustices often begin not with loud, dramatic demands or sudden revolutions, but with a deep moral conviction, a quiet willingness to speak truth to power, and a tireless, persistent, and compassionate dedication to justice, even in the quietest and most difficult of battles. Her unwavering light cut through the pervasive shadows of hypocrisy and injustice. Let us now, with a gentle and compassionate lens, explore a peculiar and often tragic phenomenon that deeply impacted countless Victorian women. A pervasive mystery woven into the very fabric of medical and social understanding of the time. Hysteria. This diagnosis, now largely discredited by modern medical science, was a catch-all term for a vast and bewildering array of female ailments. Frequently mental, emotional, or neurological in origin, and represented a profound and often internalized form of quiet suffering, where a woman's genuine distress was pathologized, dismissed, or misunderstood rather than truly comprehended and treated with empathy. Imagine a world where the prevailing medical and societal belief systems largely viewed the female body as inherently fragile, intrinsically delicate, and perpetually susceptible to emotional and nervous disorders. The dominant medical theories of the time often attributed women's ailments, particularly those without clear physical causes, to their reproductive organs, most notably the uterus, which was strangely believed to wander throughout the body, causing a myriad of seemingly unrelated symptoms in various organs. Thus, the very term hysteria itself directly derived from the ancient Greek word for uterus, hyster. Symptoms attributed to hysteria were incredibly broad, vague, and encompassing. Profound anxiety, debilitating insomnia, inexplicable irritability, sudden fainting spells, uncontrollable nervousness, persistent headaches, muscle spasms, loss of appetite, an overwhelming sense of ennui, or even dramatic symptoms like temporary paralysis, fits, or seizures that mimicked serious neurological conditions. The very breadth and vagueness of these symptoms strongly suggest that hysteria was not a singular, identifiable disease in the modern sense, but rather a complex societal construct, a convenient and all-encompassing label for female distress, rebellion, or nonconformity that could not be easily explained, cured, or, perhaps most tellingly, was simply inconvenient or uncomfortable to acknowledge for a society built on strict female roles. The quiet suffering for women who were diagnosed with hysteria was multifaceted and deeply insidious. Firstly, and perhaps most devastatingly, it often invalidated their genuine physical or emotional pain. A woman complaining of chronic, debilitating headaches, pervasive exhaustion, or profound, inexplicable sadness might be casually dismissed by her physician or family as merely hysterical, or symptoms attributed to an overactive imagination, a desire for attention, or an inherently weak nervous system. This quiet dismissal of their very real experience could lead to a deep and gnawing sense of frustration, profound isolation, and a crushing feeling of being utterly misunderstood. Secondly, the prescribed treatments for hysteria were often bizarre, unscientific, and, in some cases, terrifyingly invasive. These could range from the infamous rest cures, which involved enforced bed rest, isolation from family and friends, minimal intellectual stimulation, and often a restrictive diet. Ironically, often worsening the very anxiety and depression it aimed to cure, to more extreme and horrifying measures. These included the highly questionable practice of pelvic massage, or the truly barbaric and medically unfounded practice of clitoridectomy, based on the utterly misguided and misogynistic belief that female sexual desire was itself a source of illness or moral degeneracy. In some extreme and tragic cases, the removal of the ovaries was even recommended to cure the perceived source of female instability. Imagine the quiet terror and profound sense of powerlessness of facing such invasive and degrading treatments with no genuine understanding or consent. For many women, hysteria was perhaps a subconscious, deeply internalized manifestation of the profound and often suffocating societal constraints placed upon them. In a world where overt rebellion or direct protest was impossible or severely punished, where intellectual, professional, and emotional outlets were severely restricted, and where personal desires and individual agency were often relentlessly suppressed, the body itself might have become a silent canvas for unspoken distress, a somatic expression of psychological turmoil. A sudden fainting spell could be a quiet, albeit involuntary, escape from an unbearable social situation or an oppressive domestic environment. An inexplicable paralysis might be a subconscious, symbolic refusal to perform expected domestic duties or social graces. These were rarely deliberate, conscious acts of defiance, but rather deeply internalized expressions of a life constrained by rigid expectations, unfulfilled potential, and profound emotional repression. The silent screams alluded to in the title can be powerfully interpreted as the unspoken anguish, the profound frustrations, and the unexpressed desires that found an outlet through these puzzling physical or emotional symptoms, trapped within the confines of their elegant flower-patterned privacy. The quiet domesticity that was supposed to be a woman's haven could also, paradoxically, be a gilded cage, leading to profound boredom, intellectual starvation, a crushing sense of purposelessness, or intense feelings of entrapment, particularly for intelligent, spirited women with no external outlets for their talents and ambitions. The relentless pressure to maintain a perfect home, to be constantly pleasing, submissive, and effortlessly gracious. To project an image of serene domestic bliss, even when faced with financial anxieties, difficult children, or profound personal challenges, could also be a source of immense and unacknowledged stress, leading to a quiet breakdown that found its convenient diagnosis in hysteria. The eventual decline of the hysteria diagnosis as a legitimate medical condition coincided with broader social and scientific changes, particularly the burgeoning women's suffrage movement, increasing female access to education and professions, and the gradual emergence of psychology and psychotherapy, which began to offer more nuanced and empathetic understandings of mental health and human suffering. The mystery of Victorian hysteria, therefore, is not a mystery of pathology in the traditional sense, but a poignant and revealing reflection of a society that profoundly struggled to understand and accommodate the complex inner lives, intellectual aspirations, and emotional realities of its women, often leaving their quiet, internalized suffering to echo silently within the suffocating confines of their prescribed domestic spheres. It was a profound collective sigh of a deeply constrained existence. Let us conclude our quiet exploration by turning our attention to a fascinating figure from the very heart of the royal family. A woman whose life, while undeniably privileged beyond measure, still revealed a quiet yet persistent aspiration that subtly pushed against the rigid boundaries of royal convention and expectation. Princess Louise, Duchess of Argyll, the sixth child and fourth daughter of the omnipresent Queen Victoria. Louise's story offers a rare and intriguing glimpse into a life where genuine artistic talent and a deep-seated desire for personal creative expression gently challenged the formal, often stifling expectations of royal duty and public image. Imagine a young princess growing up amidst the breathtaking grandeur of Windsor Castle and the rustic charm of Balmoral, surrounded by the strictures of court etiquette and the constant scrutiny of public life. Yet, unlike many of her siblings, a number of whom were destined primarily for strategic dynastic marriages to European royalty, Louise harbored a deep and authentic passion for art and sculpture. This was not merely a dilettante's fleeting hobby, a polite accomplishment for a royal lady. She possessed genuine, recognized talent and demonstrated a serious, unwavering commitment to her craft. In an era where royal women were primarily groomed for domesticity, ceremonial duties, and the production of heirs, Louise quietly yet persistently pursued a path that allowed for profound individual creativity and intellectual engagement. She sought formal artistic education, not in private lessons within the palace as a mere pastime, but remarkably, enrolling as a serious student in the National Art Training School in South Kensington, often using a pseudonym to avoid undue attention and allow her to learn alongside commoners. Imagine the quiet joy and profound sense of liberation she must have felt, immersing herself in the tactile, intellectual world of artistic creation, away from the constant, stifling scrutiny of court life and royal obligations, engaging her mind and hands in a pursuit truly her own. Her quiet rebellion was never overt or confrontational. She remained a dutiful daughter, a loyal sister, and a conscientious member of the royal family, fulfilling her ceremonial duties with grace and decorum. However, her unwavering artistic pursuits provided a crucial outlet for her individuality and a subtle, yet powerful challenge to the unspoken royal rule that members of the monarchy, particularly women, should not engage in professional or commercially oriented endeavors, which were deemed beneath their station. She not only created art, but actively exhibited her sculptures and paintings, including a notable and well-received bronze statue of her mother, Queen Victoria, which still stands today outside Kensington Palace, a lasting testament to her skill. Her works were often praised by critics for their technical skill, emotional sensitivity, and anatomical accuracy. This quiet achievement allowed her a unique form of public recognition based on her personal merit and talent, rather than solely on her birthright, distinguishing her from her siblings and peers. Furthermore, Princess Louise's marriage in 1871 to John Campbell, Marquis of Lorne, was by strict royal standards considered somewhat unconventional and a subtle break from tradition. While he was undoubtedly a member of the high British aristocracy, he was not a foreign prince from a European royal house, which was the norm for Victoria's children, particularly her daughters. This marriage was seen by some as a less prestigious, though perhaps more personally appealing, match. However, it allowed Louise a greater degree of personal freedom and independence than some of her sisters, who were married into rigid, formal, and sometimes stifling European courts. Her husband was a politically engaged individual, serving as a member of Parliament, and shared her deep interests in culture, literature, and the arts, providing a quiet intellectual companionship and mutual respect that was not always present in royal marriages of the time. Their time spent in Canada, where John served as Governor-General from 1878 to 1883, also offered Louise an invaluable opportunity to engage with a new, less formal environment, fostering her artistic endeavors and allowing her to engage in public service and patronize the arts in a different, more relaxed context, away from the constant strictures of the British court. Throughout her long life, Princess Louise maintained a quiet independence, embracing progressive social causes such as women's higher education, establishing art schools for women, and actively supporting various art societies and charitable organizations. She used her privileged position not for personal aggrandizement, but to quietly champion artistic development, social reform, and the empowerment of women through education and creative expression. Her existence, while undoubtedly insulated by immense wealth and privilege, was not without its own set of internal constraints, personal sorrows, and the relentless expectations of her powerful family and public role. Yet, within these defined boundaries, she carved out a significant space for personal fulfillment. Intellectual engagement and creative expression, demonstrating that even within the most rigid and formal of social structures, quiet aspiration, the pursuit of individual passions, and subtle acts of self-definition could lead to a life of profound personal meaning and lasting quiet influence. Her story reminds us that even within the most constricting of corsets, a vibrant spirit of creativity, a keen intellect, and an unwavering personal will could find ways to breathe, to flourish, and to leave a quiet yet indelible mark on the grand tapestry of history, a testament to the enduring power of a quietly lived, deeply felt life.